What if social media caused the fall of Rome? It's 100 AD. The Roman Empire is the most powerful civilization on Earth. They've got roads, running water, concrete, a professional army, and a legal system that still influences your laws today. Absolute unit of an empire. And it is about to be destroyed. Not by the Huns, not by plague, not by political corruption, well, actually, yes, by political corruption, but with extra steps. It's going to be destroyed because someone gave every Roman citizen a smartphone. Welcome to Forum Maximus, ancient Rome's social media platform. And welcome to the video where we ask the most important historical question of our time. What if the comment section had existed in 100 AD? Stay until the end, because this story has a conclusion that is going to make you put your phone down. Briefly, before you pick it back up to share this video, which is fine. We'll get to the irony later. Right, quick context, because we need to understand what we're actually dealing with before we blow it up. Rome at its peak is genuinely staggering. 5 million square kilometers of territory, 70 million people, roads so well built that some of them are still being used today, 2,000 years later. Your local council can't even fix a pothole in 2 weeks, but sure, let's not make comparisons. The empire stretched from Scotland to Syria, from Morocco to Mesopotamia. It had Mediterranean trade routes, a single currency, a uniform legal system, and the most feared military force in the ancient world. For the people living in it, Rome wasn't just a country, it was the entire concept of civilization. Everything beyond its borders was, quite literally, called Barbaricum, the place where barbarians live. Rude, but also kind of their whole brand. But here's the structural tension that makes this whole hypothetical so delicious. Rome was not one culture. It was a patchwork empire of wildly different peoples. Gauls, Egyptians, Syrians, Britons, Berbers, Greeks, Jews, Dacians, all with different languages, different gods, different food, different traditions, all held together by two things: Roman law and the very credible threat of Roman legions showing up if you stopped cooperating. There was no television, no radio, no printing press. The fastest information traveled was on horseback. Days, weeks, sometimes months, depending on distance. A rebellion brewing in Gaul wouldn't inflame tensions in Syria, because by the time Syria heard about it, it was over. Distance was Rome's invisible glue. It kept problems local. Now, what happens when you take away that glue? What happens when every single grievance, every imperial blunder, every failed harvest and bent coin and corrupt governor is broadcast to every corner of the empire? Instantly, and every citizen can respond, react, share, and scream into the void. You get Forum Maximus, and you get chaos at the speed of light. Let's be fair to social media for about 30 seconds, which is honestly more than it deserves. When Forum Maximus first launches, it's wonderful. Merchants advertise their goods across provinces they've never visited. Soldiers stationed on Hadrian's Wall post moody fog content and rack up followers back home in Rome. Historians document military campaigns in real time. Incredible content, genuinely. Emperor Trajan posts a photo of his column, the famous one that still stands today, with the caption, "New build, drop the column emoji if you're proud of your emperor," and gets 3 million likes before dinner. The Senate loves it, the plebs love it, the emperor loves it. For about 6 months, Forum Maximus is just delightful. And then the algorithm figures out that outrage gets more engagement than contentment, as it always does. As it always does. Here's problem number 1. Rome had a diversity management strategy, and that strategy was basically keep everyone slightly apart and let shared infrastructure do the heavy lifting. You all use Roman roads, you all use Roman coins, you all bow to Roman law. Beyond that, do your thing, worship your gods, keep your customs. You don't particularly care as long as the taxes come in. This worked because of distance. A Gaul resenting Roman taxation didn't have a direct line to a Syrian who also resented Roman taxation. They couldn't organize, they couldn't compare notes, they couldn't build a pan-empire coalition of the aggrieved. Forum Maximus ends all of that in a week. Within months, you have cross-provincial grievance networks forming organically. A Gaul posts about unfair grain taxes. A Syrian reacts with, "We have the same problem." A Briton shares it. A Berber adds his experience. Suddenly, you've got a thread with 40,000 replies that functions as a real-time map of imperial discontent, and the whole empire can see it. In isolation, each of these grievances is manageable. Rome dealt with local revolts all the time, but connected grievances, synchronized grievances, grievances with a shared hashtag and a viral mosaic meme attached, that's a different animal entirely. That's the beginning of an ideology. That's the infrastructure of a movement, and Rome has no communication strategy to fight it with because Rome has never needed one before. Oh, this is where it gets really good. Let me introduce you to what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century, 235 to 284 AD. 50 years, 26 emperors, average reign less than 2 years. Most of them died violently. One, Emperor Valerian, was captured by the Persian king Shapur I and used as a human footstool for the rest of his life. That's not a metaphor. The man was literally a footstool. History is metal. This crisis happened without social media. The Roman political system was already so unstable that generals were constantly declaring themselves emperor, marching on Rome, killing the current guy, and then getting killed by the next guy who fancied to go. Now, give every one of these generals a Forum Maximus account. Every coup is now announced in advance with a hype video. Every assassination is live tweeted by someone's secretary. Every new emperor has a launch post, day one of making Rome great again, followed by a counterpost from his rival, actually, I'm the real emperor, and here's a thread explaining why. The Senate spends more time managing its collective online reputation than it does governing. Senators are hiring scribes just to handle their 4 Maximus replies. And the public is riveted. They're picking sides, they're making memes. Some centurion from Lugdunum, that's Lyon in modern France, posts a 17-second video of himself in full armor declaring himself the true heir of Augustus, and it goes so viral that 3 million legions pledge loyalty to him before his commanding officer even finds out. Here's the genuinely terrifying part about this from a historical analysis standpoint. Roman political stability depended entirely on manufactured consensus. The emperor was powerful because everyone agreed he was powerful. Legality, a lineage, divine favor, these were all stories. Stories that worked because they were the only stories in town. The moment you have a platform where anyone can write a competing story, and that story can reach 1 million people by morning, the whole fiction starts to unravel. Legitimacy is just a narrative, and Forum Maximus is a narrative machine with no off switch. You thought it couldn't get worse. It gets worse. Rome had a recurring economic problem. Emperors who needed money they didn't have. Their solution, repeatedly and disastrously, was to debase the currency, melt down the silver coins, add cheap metals, reissue them with the same face value. Inflation, ancient style. In the real timeline, this process was slow and confusing. Merchants noticed, adjusted prices gradually, confidence eroded over years. It was bad, but it was manageable bad. With Forum Maximus, the second anyone notices the new coins are lighter, it's a post. That post gets shared, a merchant in Antioch reads it and immediately raises prices. A money changer in Alexandria sees the price shift and posts about it. Now it's trending. Now the imperial treasury is having a financial crisis in real time, in public, with full audience participation. And that's just the real economic information. Layer on top of that the misinformation, because there is always misinformation. And you have an absolute catastrophe. Rumors that the emperor is secretly selling grain to Persia, that the treasury is empty, that a plague is coming, that the barbarians have already crossed the Rhine. False, probably false, and actually true, but being dismissed as a conspiracy theory because everything sounds like a conspiracy theory now. The Roman government cannot issue corrections fast enough. It has no mechanism to reach as many people as the rumor did. The truth is slower than the lie. It always was. Forum Maximus just made the gap a canyon. This one's a quiet killer. The Roman army was not just a fighting force, it was a cultural institution. Discipline, unit cohesion, absolute loyalty to the chain of command. These weren't just tactics, they were a religion. A legionary identity was entirely bound up in the collective. You were your legion, you were Rome. Individual ego was beaten out of you in training and replaced with something more powerful: solidarity. Forum Maximus is the complete philosophical opposite of that. Forum Maximus is built on individual expression, on personal brand, on saying your truth loudly to as many people as possible, on follower counts and engagement metrics and the dopamine of being heard. You cannot run a disciplined fighting force of that. You just can't. Soldiers start posting complaints about their commanding officers. Officers start building personal followings bigger than the generals above them. Legions develop partisan identities. This one supports the emperor in Rome, that one supports the pretender in Gaul, and the other one hasn't decided yet, but their content is leaning a particular direction. Loyalty becomes negotiable. Loyalty becomes public, which means it becomes performative, which means it becomes fake. And here's the thing, Rome's enemies can see all of this. The Germanic tribes on the other side of the Rhine are watching Forum Maximus with the same attention a chess player gives to the board. They're not going to march against a unified Roman army, but a Roman army that's publicly fractured, debating itself, whose generals are feuding on social media. That's a completely different proposition. You don't need to defeat Rome on the battlefield if Rome is already defeating itself in the comment section. So here's the call. In this alternate history, Rome doesn't fall in 476 AD, the traditional date historians use for the end of the Western Empire. It falls earlier, significantly earlier. Our best estimate? The Western Empire collapses around 350 to 380 AD, roughly a century ahead of schedule. Not because Forum Maximus causes new problems, but because it takes every existing problem Rome already had, and Rome had many, and accelerates them past the point of recovery. The crisis of the 3rd century, which in real history Rome somehow clawed its way out of after 50 brutal years, becomes unsurvivable. The economy destabilizes faster than any emperor can stabilize it. The military fractures into factional loyalty networks before any reformer can rebuild it. The cultural diversity that Rome managed through careful, slow, distance-based separation erupts into an empire-wide identity crisis with nowhere to go. And crucially, the buffer time disappears. In real history, Rome had time to reform, to consolidate, to find a Diocletian or a Constantine who could pull things back from the edge. Social media takes that time away. Every problem is immediate. Every crisis is now. There is no slow build that gives smart people the chance to intervene. There is only the feed. Refreshing, refreshing, refreshing. The Visigoths don't smash Rome's gates in our hypothetical. They walk through a door that Rome, distracted and fractured and exhausted, simply forgot to close. Now, here's where I'm supposed to say, good job we live in a totally different time and none of this applies to us. But here's the thing. Every single mechanism we just described, the fracturing of shared reality, the acceleration of political instability, the way outrage travels faster than truth, the collapse of institutional trust, the ability of foreign actors to run influence campaigns inside your own population without firing a single arrow, none of that is ancient history. All of that is just history, recent history, current history. Rome fell for complicated reasons. Historians have been arguing about the exact mix for literally 1,500 years. But almost everything on that list, the political chaos, the economic mismanagement, the inability to hold a diverse population together under one coherent story, is made worse, faster, by a tool that makes everyone loud and nobody accountable. Rome didn't have that tool. We gave it to ourselves. And unlike the Romans, who had no warning, we've had journalists, psychologists, historians, and the lived experience of watching it happen, all telling us exactly what it does. So the question isn't what if social media caused the fall of Rome? The question is, what kind of empire are we building? And what are we quietly pulling apart, one post at a time? Anyway, like and subscribe. I know.